got the tank off so we can kind of see what we're dealing with as far as overall condition and if we have any leaks. Now I don't know if this has been repainted or not, but it's got some bubbling paint in the corner here, which generally you don't see paint bubble like that. We've got a couple of rust holes right here in the corner. If you can see that on camera, that's a shame because the tank's in really good shape otherwise. Very clean. But it's got one rust hole on that corner. It's probably got several more. Now the way this paint's bubbling, I would guess this is a respray. You don't generally see 60s paint bubble like that after it's been on there that long. Unfortunately, that's going to be a tank replacement for me. I've got more spots over here, so there are a lot of rust holes in the back of this. You could probably, clean up those holes and fill them and then do a tank sealer. But I don't do tank sealers. I don't like them. I've had them fail. I'm not a fan. So we'll be on the hunt for a new tank, unfortunately. Good part is the chrome's in excellent shape. So unless something's amiss when we get this torn apart, I'll be able to use, I think, all the chrome on the bike, even the gas cap's in tremendously good shape. I don't know if somebody did a restoration on this bike in the past or if it's just a survivor in really good condition with some repro parts. We'll find out as we move along, but you can tell from the inside of the tank that this thing was pretty rough. A lot of scale inside. What's equally unfortunate is that these tanks cost a couple $100 for an even mediocre example, so I haven't found any repros or good deals, and you're always taking a chance when you buy an eBay tank that it's got the same thing once you get the paint off of it, so not ideal. If I had to choose between the chrome and the tank, I'd prefer that all the chrome are in good shape, and it really is. I don't know if any of this stuff's repro chrome. It does not appear to be so far, and it is just in really good condition. This had to have been a fairly dry climate bike. A couple of scuffs here and there, but I can polish this up beautifully. It's going to look really nice. Well, if you're watching this resto and you have an S-90 tank that's rust-free, drop me a message. I'll be on the hunt now. Next thing we'll be doing is pulling off the carb and taking a look at that. I expect it to be in equally bad condition, but we'll get it cleaned up and see what needs to be replaced. And again, I'm going to try to get it fired up before I strip the whole thing down so that I know how much I'm dealing with in the engine. Be surprised how many of these little Honda engines do not need to be rebuilt at all. Just need some fresh oil and clean carb and ready to go. We'll find out soon enough. I did want to add on some of these earlier Hondas, the petcock has a screw down underneath the filter screen. Well, you can see that in the video. And that's what holds the petcock on here. Pretty notorious for stripping out if the tank's in bad shape. It's like a number 3 Phillips. The filter screen on this guy is non-existent. Just had to tear it apart to get in there, so we'll use a scribe and clean up that number 3 and see if we can salvage this petcock. So, got the petcock out of there, but it is pretty bad shape. Not terrible, certainly seen worse, so we'll clean that up and see if I can find a new bowl. You can see that Phillips now. That's about all for the tank. We'll be moving on. Well, from inside the air box, it looked like the carb had been crushed, but there's actually a little bit of an intake boot. It's really hard rubber, so be sourcing that. Looks like that just seals against the air filter box, and then the air filter seals against that. I'll show you that later. Everything else on the carb looks reasonably good shape. We'll get it on the bench and get it torn down. It looks like it's going to be usable, which is nice because new Cayenne carbs are in the neighborhood of a few $100, 180 to 500 depending on where you go. This is the air filter, and bolts in from both ends, and then presses against this intake boot. I imagine we'll have to source all that stuff. It's got a foam seal around it. Okay, well, got a load of varnish and stuff in there. You can see the main jet's pretty much black as tar. Needle's not moving or anything. It's overall not terrible though. I think this is going to clean up pretty nicely. All in all, this carb is in good shape. Jets are all going to need to be cleaned up, and I've got some cheap replacements coming and a new seal for the bowl. I'd say this thing hasn't been sitting too terribly long, several years maybe, but certainly not a crazy amount of time. Fuel hasn't all turned to dust. Still just kind of some varnish. So, like I said, really not bad. Carb is totally salvageable. So we'll soak it in some berry mints and clean it up real good and go from there. Alright, I've had the carburetor and a few of the small parts soaking in this berry mint carb cleaner I've had for 20 years. Still works pretty well. Been soaking overnight. At the very least, this should loosen up some of the gunk. If you watched earlier in the video, you can see all the stuff that was on that bowl. It's pretty much gone. It's fantastic. I think they still sell this stuff. I don't know if it's the same formula. Like I said, I've had it forever. About half a gallon left in here, but it's still good enough for small carbs. So I've got an assortment of brushes here. I've got a soft brass brush, nylon brush, steel brush, toothbrush, and I've got an assortment of paint gun cleaning tips that are small enough to clean out most jets. And I also got in the mail a carburetor kit today. So I don't know what kind of quality the carb kit is. Aside from those keister ones out of Japan, which I don't find to be any better than the Chinese kits. It's hard to get anything really good these days unless you can get an OEM. But this all looks fine. So I actually plugged a battery into the bike over there and was able to get a spark. That's about it. But I'm going to go ahead and rebuild this carb and see if I can get the bike to fire up and go from there. So let's get cleaning. Well, that's all. Not bad for a 10-minute rebuild on here. We'll take this back down and clean it up really well for the resto, but again, this is just to see if we can get it running. The carb looks great after a soak, minus getting down into the nooks and crannies here. Everything looks to be in good shape. The fuel tank, if you recall, is not going to hold any fuel, so I'm going to have to rig something up to hold fuel, and then we'll pop this guy on and see if we can get it running. Cleaned up the plug a little bit. It's got a spark, not a great spark. The boot's trash, so it doesn't clip onto the plug very well. It's really, again, just to see if we can get it to test fire. I just need some fuel. Alright, it's pretty ghetto setup. Got a funnel, fuel line, and of course I checked the oil, which looks okay enough for a test start. It's not worth changing. Feels good. I think we'll be fine. Certainly not going to ride it like this, but might shift it into gear and stuff. We'll start with just a touch of fuel. I don't know if it's getting enough spark. I may have to find a boot to put on here. That should be enough if it's going to start. I have a good feeling. Hondas like to run. Line's just a little bit loose on there. well, it runs. May leave me with more questions than answers as far as whether or not I need to get into it. I got the clutch side apart because the horn was stuck on when I turned the key on, so I didn't get to pull the clutch in and put it in gear. But it does run. So from here, I guess we know the engine runs, shifts into gear. Do a compression test. Had a fair amount of smoke. Hard to say if it was looked like oil and smelled like oil, so probably got blew right past the rings. We'll tear it down, like I said, clean up the head and cylinder and do a compression test and see what everything looks like in there. It's running a little rough. From here, I would normally start taking everything apart, bagging and tagging all the hardware, and then I just do one piece at a time, and kind of once I can polish some chrome one day and set it aside, and I might do some painting another day, and I'll get it down to a bare frame, and every piece as we build it back up will get addressed and go from there.